Sammy Sosa, 57 years old, sits quietly in a large house in Miami, the last light of the day falling on a face far removed from the image America once etched into its memory. On the screen in front of him, old footage replays the legendary swings of the summer of 1998, when he turned every game into a national party, when the American flag waved in the hands of an immigrant from the Dominican Republic, and when the stands at Wrigley Field shook under the roar of the crowd. He hit 66 home runs, won MVP, brought baseball back to the hearts of fans after the strike that had paralyzed the national pastime. The press called him the man who saved baseball, the one who restored America's faith. Kids wore jersey number 21. Adults brought American flags to the ballpark, and every swing of his bat was a reminder. The American dream was still alive. He was a symbol of strength, of a smile rising above poverty, of the miracle that only sports can create. But time never keeps miracles for anyone. 27 years later, that hero lives amid silent walls. His lightened face became a subject of mockery. Social media turned his image into a joke, and the press, once hailing him as a savior, now acts as if he never existed. His body is frail, his back aches every morning, and his heart carries the scar of oblivion. The man who once united the nation with joy now lives in a solitude heavier than any sound. He understands that fame was once a crown, but now it's a chain. And in that fading light, there's still a small flame, the flame of the shoeshine boy from Consuelo, still refusing to go out. Before the lights go out, before the laughter turns to scorn, Sammy Sosa was just a child who longed to be seen, and his whole life fought for that moment. Far from the lights of Wrigley Field, the story's beginning was just a poor coastal town called San Pedro de Macorís, a land where children didn't count dreams but counted stars on rusted tin roofs. Sammy Sosa was born there, in a small brick house without electricity, where every night his mother Maria lit a candle instead of a bulb, sewing clothes and praying for work tomorrow. His father, Juan Bautista Montero, died suddenly from a brain hemorrhage when Sammy was 6 years old. That death didn't just take the only father, but also the fragile shelter of peace for the family. His mother had to raise 7 children, fighting hunger, the sun, and the world's indifference alone. Sammy soon learned that in Consuelo, no one was born to be pitied. Mornings, he shined shoes along dirt roads, the brush on leather replacing the drumbeat of childhood. At noon, under the sun, he washed cars, picked up cans, carried water for those richer than him. At night, he slept on the cold cement floor, eating cold rice with salt water and dreaming of a baseball glove he knew his mother could never afford in a lifetime. In that world, every day was a small battle. The world forgot his name before it even learned to spell it. The world forgot his name before it could spell it right. But baseball, the game of those with nothing but hope, became the only miracle he believed in. His first bat was a broken broomstick, the ball a sock stuffed with rags, the stadium an empty lot behind the house where dust flew when the sea wind blew. He hit the ball not for the game, but because each swing was a challenge to poverty, a way to shout that I still exist. Every time the bat hit the ball, the dry crack echoed in the red sunset, as if the sky heard the plea of the boy swinging for his whole life. His mother still said on rainy nights, when thunder mixed with the waves crashing offshore, "You have to swing harder than your fear." Those words stuck with him for life, becoming a command etched in his blood. Once, after a long day without enough money for rice, Sammy stood in the rain, holding the broomstick bat with both hands, eyes staring at the sky and swinging hard, as if to hit the fate mocking him. Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating the thin face and fiery eyes, the eyes of a child who knew that if he didn't rise, he would disappear. In the years after, when people asked why he always swung with all his strength, he just smiled and said, "I learned to swing like it was the last one of my life." In Consuelo, dreams didn't come by luck. They came by calloused hands and long nights, gritting teeth through hunger. Sammy grew up amid the smell of sweat, kitchen smoke, and the sad lullabies of a mother exhausted but never giving up. It was there, in the red dust and tears, that his character was forged into steel, resilient, stubborn, never begging for pity. Every morning, when the sun shone on the shabby roofs, Sammy picked up his homemade bat, stepped out to the empty lot behind the house, and kept swinging as if the whole world was waiting to hear the ball meet the bat. No one expected that from that place full of mud and despair, a legend would be born. From the dust of Consuelo, that boy stood up, with survival hunger flowing in his veins, not dreams of fame, but a fire no one could extinguish. In 1985, at just 17 years old, Sammy received a small piece of paper that changed his life, the first professional contract with the Texas Rangers. It was the first time in his life he saw an airplane ticket, a thin sheet like a dream, trembling in the hands of a boy who had never left Consuelo. The day he left home, his mother gripped her son's hand tightly, slipped a worn rosary into his pocket, and whispered, "Carry this, and don't forget where you come from." The flight lasted a few hours but took Sammy across a whole world. When he landed in America, everything was strange. No one spoke Spanish, no one knew his name, and no one cared about the skinny boy with old gloves and eyes shining with hope. In summer training camp, he heard others laugh at his clumsy pronunciation, the way he bowed his head saying, "Yes, coach," without understanding the question. They called him wild, swing, no discipline, Dominican power but no brain. Where the American dream began, he was just a joke. But Sammy didn't fight back. He chose silence, chose to let sweat and blood speak for him. While teammates slept, he stayed on the field, practicing hits until his hands bled. Each swing was a silent vow that he would not disappear. Others went to parties, while he swept the field with a broom. When assigned to pick up balls, he did it twice as fast, because he knew it was the only way people would see him. He delivered coffee to stars in Cowell's mailroom. Sammy carried bats for men who laughed at his dream. That line seemed written just for him, the invisible man in a world of big names. Through each season, he was traded like cheap goods, from Rangers to White Sox, then drifting again. People said he hit hard but was stupid, couldn't learn tactics. Every time he entered the locker room, he heard whispers behind his back. "He'll never make it." In Chicago, it was colder than Consuelo. He rented a small apartment, just enough for a single bed and a torn suitcase. No friends, no family, just the wind whistling through the window frame and loneliness weighing heavy in his heart. On winter nights, he practiced alone on the field, weak stadium lights casting on frozen ground. The bat in his hand was not just a tool, but an anchor keeping him tied to hope. He hit until sweat mixed with blood, until his shoulders went numb, until his hands shook but his heart still roared, "I will not go back." One night, after a long practice, he sat on a wooden bench, looking at the foggy Chicago sky, despair rising in him. He missed home, missed his mother, missed the sound of Consuelo's sea waves, missed the smell of burnt rice and his homeland's sad lullabies. He thought about quitting, buying a one-way ticket, returning to the small house by the sea, and living like everyone else, poor but peaceful. But while cleaning his locker, his eyes stopped on a Chicago Cubs team poster someone had left in the locker room. In the photo, a player in blue stood in the sunny stadium, the stands behind full of cheering people. Sammy looked into those eyes confident, head high, and whispered, almost a prayer, "Someday they will know my name." That poster became his talisman, the reason to wake up every cold morning. Whenever he was mocked, cut from the lineup, called the mistake from Dominican Republic, he remembered it. He wasn't born to be a star. He was born to endure, to persist, to prove. In others' world, he was just a strange name hard to pronounce. But in his own world, he began turning humiliation into fuel, contempt into energy. The criticisms, the scornful smiles became the beat in his chest, pushing him forward without stop. From being forgotten, he forged rebellion. From rejection, he carved unbreakable spirit. From rejection, he carved his rebellion. The spring of 1998 opened in the gloomy air of an America that had forgotten how to love baseball. The strike 4 years earlier turned millions of fans away, stadiums empty, the umpire's whistle echoing in cold seats. Baseball, once called America's soul, was now a faded memory. People said, "That game is dead." But in Chicago, amid smoke-covered buildings and the Silver River, a man prepared to prove miracles still existed. His name was Sammy Sosa. When the season started, no one bet on him. They said Mark McGwire of St. Louis was the only hope, the giant strong enough to bring fans back. And Sosa, with his kind smile and clumsy English, was just a name added to fill the list. But baseball is always the game of the unexpected. June, Chicago sweltering, wind from Lake Michigan carrying heavy humidity. In the game against Milwaukee, Sammy's swing tore the air. The ball vanished into the gray sky, over the fence, and into the sea of screaming people. From that moment, America began following his every step. McGwire hit 1, Sammy answered with 2. Every night, scoreboards updated, 2 names chasing each other like destinies. From small bars in Texas to Bronx streets, people turned on TV just to hear the crack of bat on ball and wait to see who would break Roger Maris's 61 home run record. The press wrote that, for the first time since the war, America had a common reason to be happy. Kids brought American flags to the park, shouting, "Slammin' Sammy," every time he stepped to the plate. Each swing was a prayer, a dose of medicine for America's soul after years of division. The image of him kissing 2 fingers, pointing to the sky, then raising the American flag became a ritual of hope. He didn't need to say much. His smile was enough to make millions believe the immigrant dream was real, that a shoeshine boy from Dominican could make this whole nation stand up. McGwire had power, but Sosa had the story. Each home run was a chapter in the epic of the forgotten. He wasn't just hitting balls, he was awakening love. Chicago became the center of the world. Wrigley Field blazed every night, stands no longer empty. Crowds waved flags, strangers hugged, tears mixed with cheers. When he ran the bases, arms high, smile radiant, people forgot differences in skin, language, origin. In that moment, America was healed. The press called him the man who saved baseball. Time magazine wrote, "He brought faith back to America's heart." McGwire broke the record first, but Sammy made fans feel they were witnessing something divine. When the season ended, he had 66 home runs, more than anyone except McGwire, and 1 MVP. People say after the last game, when the lights went out, he sat alone in the locker room, holding his bat, eyes on the sky through a small window. He whispered in Spanish, "Gracias, Dios," thank you, God. For Sammy, that summer wasn't just records, it was salvation. The poor boy from Consuelo made America, for one season, believe miracles still existed. He came from a place no one remembered, and now millions chanted his name like a song. But while fans were lost in the light, a shadow began forming underneath. Pressure, fame, the sport's thirst for performance weighed on his shoulders. Praise turned to expectations, smiles to scrutiny. Every swing was a test of character. The brighter the light, the longer the shadow it casts. The brighter the light, the longer the shadow. He didn't know that in that glorious summer, he had begun stepping into his own darkness. When Slammin' Sammy posters flooded the country, when every kid dreamed of being like him, he was still the man carrying fear of not being truly loved, that public love existed only as long as he hit balls over the fence. And then fall came. Yellow leaves on Michigan Avenue, Chicago sky grayer, wind colder. The stadium silent. He walked out of Wrigley Field, looked back once at the stands that exploded for his name, and saw empty seats. He knew every miracle has an end, but he still smiled, still kissed 2 fingers, pointed to the sky, as if telling God he had done his part. In America's memory, the summer of 1998 998 became legend, the summer of cracking bats, flying flags, of a brown-skinned man making the world stop to watch. And in Sammy's private memory, it was the summer he lived a dream, before fate began collecting its debt. For one golden summer, America believed in him, and in believing, forgot he was human. But no light lasts forever. That golden summer faded, leaving empty seats, old articles, and a cold silence waiting. In 2003, the world witnessed the first fall of the man who saved baseball. An ordinary evening at Wrigley Field. The bat cracked, then shattered. Wood fragments flew under the stadium lights, falling like pieces of a broken monument. In that moment, millions froze as the camera panned to the bat's barrel stuffed with cork. "A corked bat," the commentator said, voice shaking in disbelief. Headlines minutes later. Sosa's bat explodes and with it his halo. The man who kissed the American flag was now labeled a cheater. The crowd that stood for him now said nothing. Just silence. A silence crueler than booze. Sammy bowed his head in apology, saying it was just a practice bat, that he didn't mean it. But in America, where icons are built on faith, one crack is enough to collapse the temple. Papers that once praised him now exposed every swing, every stat, every doubt. They wrote, "From hero to cheater." The man seen as a role model became proof of the opposite, that no one in baseball was clean. Summer 2004, the Cubs' locker room air thick. The laughter, the music of old gone. Sammy walked to his locker, saw the wall bare, no photos, no number 21 jersey. Teammates avoided his eyes. Some turned their backs as he passed. End of season. In the last game, he left the field before play. When the locker room door closed, the whole team knew an era ended. Next day, his locker cleaned out. All that remained was the smell of wood and sweat proof of a man who brought soul to this city. The man who once carried a flag now carried shame. The 1,998 image of him in the stands, raising the flag, smiling bright, now starkly opposed to him bowing before reporters, speaking softly through a translator, "I didn't mean it. I didn't betray anyone." But those words couldn't withstand the rising storm of doubt. In 2005, Sammy appeared on national TV again, not in Cubs blue, but in a gray suit, sitting before the U.S. Congress in the steroid hearing. Camera lights on his face, not to honor, but to interrogate. He sat silently, earpiece translating questions in a language he still didn't speak fluently, answering in a hoarse voice, word by word through the translator, "I have never used steroids." But the room didn't believe. A nation that built him as an idol now judged him as a criminal. Millions watched live, quietly seeing the symbol of the American dream bent. TV replayed him, bowing, arms trembling. Commentators said, "The face that once saved baseball now stands as its greatest shame." Sammy went home that night, said nothing. Phones stopped ringing. Talk show, invites, ads, contracts, all gone. Friends who crowded now avoided. Papers no longer called him Slammin' Sammy, but the fallen idol. He sat in the quiet living room. Looking at the broken bat someone returned in a glass case, feeling like he saw his heart inside. All glory now evidence against him. In Dominican, people still defended him, saying, "Sammy doesn't need to prove anything more." But in America, where he made fans cry with joy, they mentioned him with sarcasm. Public betrayal hurt more than any injury. It was a life sentence unspoken, but never erased. In that silence, Sammy gradually understood fame's cruel rule. Fans loved him not for him, but for the image they wanted to believe. When the image shattered, they turned away, leaving him alone in an empty room, with distant echoes of the past. He once carried the American flag around the field, believing he was accepted. Now he saw only investigation doors, cold mics, and eyes without trust. The audience's silence was the harshest punishment. The man who made a nation stand now had no one beside him. In the days after, he left Chicago. No goodbye. As the plane took off, He looked down at the city that made his name its twinkling lights reminding of millions of cheers, then blurring in the fog. He thought of summer nights, when the child in him believed he found a second home. But now, even America had no place for him. He gave America joy, and America gave him exile. In the years after, he still remembered that sound, not the cheers, but the silence when he left Wrigley Field for the last time. A silence so deep he thought he heard his heart break. Fans who wrote his name on banners now tore them, and reporters who called him savior wrote, "Perhaps he was too good to be true." In Miami, he hung old photos in his office, but rarely looked. Sometimes he passed, lightly touched the picture of him raising the flag and smiled sadly. That was the day I felt freest, and the day that freedom began leaving me. He knew he was wrong, knew he paid the price. But what hurt most wasn't losing titles, but losing trust. The cheers that once lifted him became the echo that haunted him. And in that echo, Sammy Sosa understood no victory is immune to time, and no legend is forgiven when the light goes out. After leaving Chicago, Sammy thought he just needed to walk away from the stands to find peace again. But his body, the weapon that once amazed the world, began betraying its owner. Every morning upon waking, his back cracked like a bat breaking in his hands. His shoulders ached so badly he couldn't raise them above his head. The pain wasn't just in the bones, it was a cruel reminder of thousands of swings that had torn his body apart over nearly 2 decades. Baseball made him a legend, but it traded every part of him to create that legend. In 2004, during a seemingly harmless practice, he sneezed just a simple sneeze, and his back muscle tore wide open. The news spread like wildfire. The sneeze heard round the world. The press mocked, TV satirized, comedy shows used him as a punchline. The man who made America hold its head high became fodder for cheap laughs. He read those lines, feeling pain not in his back, but in realizing the public needed only a small reason to ridicule someone they once called a hero. On sleepless nights, he looked at his calloused hands, the hands that once gripped the bat firmly, signed hundreds of balls for kids. Now they trembled, stiff, barely able to hold a glass of water. In the mirror, he no longer saw Slammin' Sammy, just a stooped man, dark, circled eyes, shoulders sagging under years traded for the crowd's life force. Upon retiring, he thought he'd find rest. But once again, the world found ways to hurt him more. In the years after, his skin gradually lightened, result of a treatment for sunspots to reduce tropical sun damage. But the public didn't need truth. They needed an image. And that image, lighter face, stranger, wearier, became a torch for the internet to mock. They called him White Sammy, posted comparison photos, made memes, tagged him the man who changed his skin. He read those headlines without anger, just sadness, because they didn't know that light wasn't bleaching, but scars of time, medicine, a body too exhausted to fight the years. One afternoon, sitting in the living room, his young son looked up from the phone screen, saw those images and asked innocently, "Papa, why they laugh?" He didn't answer, just gently placed a hand on the boy's head, then turned away. In his eyes flashed something between pride and hurt, as if every mocking word wasn't just at him, but at the child asking. Sammy gradually withdrew from the public. He avoided cameras, refused interviews, lived reclusively amid white walls and the shadows of the past. Sometimes he watched old tapes, saw himself swinging amid roaring crowds, then looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back. The once legend was now a ghost of himself. He had turned white in a world that had once loved him for his color. That line appeared in an article, like a knife straight to the most sensitive spot. They didn't understand he hadn't changed to forget his roots, he was just living on with a body that had fought too many battles. But the world didn't care about reasons, only about the joke. Those mocks made him realize public cruelty hurt more than any fall. Baseball lifted him, but its spotlight burned his skin, leaving scars that never healed. Some mornings, he tried putting on athletic clothes, wanting to jog a few laps, but just bending to tie shoes made his back spasm violently. He gasped, cold sweat breaking out, remembering days he ran the bases amid tens of thousands cheering. Now, his steps were heavy like carrying the past on his back. His body gradually healed, tears mended, but inside something never recovered. At night he sat on the balcony, looking at the Florida sky and listening to distant waves, wondering if those cheers from years ago were still somewhere in the wind. But only silence answered. He understood physical pain would pass, but spiritual humiliation, feeling torn from his own image, was the permanent sentence. He once made the world love him for being himself, and now the world laughed because he no longer looked like they remembered. For Sammy, it wasn't just shame, it was loss of identity, memory, faith in the man he once was. In the dark room, he still hung old photos. A brown-skinned man, radiant smile, arm raised with the American flag. He looked at them every night, then softly turned off the light. His body healed, but his soul stayed broken. Time passed, and with it, the roaring cheers faded too. 10 years after leaving the field, people began voting for the Hall of Fame, the place only for immortal names. Each year, the list was announced, and each year, Sammy Sosa was still missing. Year after year, his ballot stopped below 5%, too low to stay, too low for hope. Media stopped mentioning, MLB stopped inviting him back, and tribute videos to the summer of 1998, the summer that saved baseball, were made without a single frame of him. In the videos, people saw Mark McGwire, the stands, the record, but no Sosa, as if someone erased him with a cold stroke. To keep history clean, safe, unstained, they buried his legacy while he was still alive. They buried his legacy while he was still breathing, not with dirt, but with silence. No penalty, no statement. Just oblivion, the cruelest punishment America gave to one who brought them joy. In Dominican, he was still a living saint. Every time he returned home, kids ran after his car, calling his name with respect. People erected his statue in the square, called him Nuestro Orgullo, our pride. But in America, he was just a warning proof of the saying every rookie hears from day one, fame will love you, until it doesn't. He lived between two worlds, worshipped in one and forgotten in the other. In Miami, in the quiet house, sometimes he opened old highlights. Images blurred, sound crackly, but each swing, each crowd yelling, "Slammin' Sammy!" still tightened his heart. Once, watching an ESPN replay of a 1998 game, he noticed they cut the part where he raised the American flag after his 61st home run. He sat there, eyes misty, whispering almost inaudibly, "They don't even show my name anymore." Those words fell into the void, unheard, unanswered. In that moment, he understood he had become a ghost in the story he created. Somewhere in MLB archives, hundreds of balls with his signature were still auctioned, still making people rich, but the name Sammy Sosa was erased from every official page. He was no longer legend, no longer villain, just a blank space, a chapter torn from the book he helped write. On sleepless nights, he went to the balcony looking toward the sea. Wind carried moisture and salt. Far away, city lights twinkled like memories. He closed his eyes, heard in the wind the bat on ball, the stands exploding sounds of a time that couldn't return. Then silence, a thick silence, like empty stands after the final game, where the echo of a swing still hung in the air, but no one listened anymore. Many say he made his own fate, that scandals and choices cost him everything. Maybe true, but amid fake smiles and rewritten stories for easier reading, there's a truth no one dares say. No one gave America more joy than him that summer. And no one was abandoned by America so quickly. He once believed effort would earn forgiveness, but forgiveness never came, because America doesn't like looking back at those who once embarrassed them. Sammy still exercised every morning, still dieted, still answered rare interviews with a kind smile, but behind those eyes was the sadness of one who lost a second homeland. In a short talk, when asked if he wanted to return to Wrigley Field, he just smiled sadly, "They don't need me anymore." Then long silence. Perhaps he understood no ticket brings a person back to where they were erased. He once carried the American flag around the field, making millions believe in something good. Now, every time he saw that flag in the wind, he saw himself outside the frame. People say he changed, but really, America changed first. On weekends, he still went to the small field behind the house, teaching his son to hold the bat, how to breathe under pressure. Once, the boy asked, "Papa, why they never show your games on TV?" Sammy didn't answer. He just softly swung the bat. The ball flew up, fell into the red sunset sky, as if that hit was sent to the past. He once carried the hopes of a nation. Now, he carries only memories. 2025. Sammy Sosa turns 57 years old. He lives quietly in a house facing the Miami Sea, far from stadium lights, far from cheers, far from the name that once boiled America. Mornings, he wakes early, steps slowly to the balcony, hand on his back, the pain still smoldering like an unhealed wound. Each step reminds that this body paid for every swing. His eyesight weakens, bright light blurs his eyes, and sometimes, bending to tie shoes, he has to stop to breathe. But though the body wearies, his soul is no longer heavy as before. He no longer chases the Hall of Fame, no longer reads old articles, no longer hopes for a call from MLB. He has stopped chasing recognition. Now, he chases peace. At this age, he finds joy in simple things: breakfast with family, afternoons teaching his young son to hit in the backyard. The boy holds the bat wrong, misses repeatedly, and he just smiles a real, kind, light smile like the wind. "That's how it starts," he says. "Every miss teaches you how to swing." When the son asks, "Papa, will you be in the Hall of Fame someday?" he looks at the sea, silent a moment, then softly answers, "I may never be in the hall, but I'm in their hearts." Perhaps for the first time in life, he doesn't need the world to see him anymore. He just wants his son to understand true value isn't on a wall of fame, but in the good memories people leave. He spends most time on charity work. In recent years, he invested in building free baseball fields for poor kids in the Dominican Republic, kids like him back then, shining shoes, picking trash, but still hugging dreams of swinging under the Sunday. He founded a sports scholarship fund, sent hundreds of shoes, gloves, and balls to remote villages. "Let them have chances I never had," he says. In Dubai, where he sometimes vacations, he sponsors English programs for immigrant children. He no longer talks about titles, but about opportunities, because he knows sometimes a small chance can save a whole life. The wounds in him don't vanish, but he learned to turn them into reminders to love more. One afternoon, a neighbor caught him sitting alone in the yard, red sunset covering his graying hair. Before him was the old bat leaning against the chair, wood darkened, tip slightly cracked. He no longer hits balls, just sits watching his son run around, laughter ringing in the last sunlight. In that moment, time seemed to stop. No stadium, no crowd, just a man who went through glory and humiliation, sitting quietly in his small world. He lost almost everything: fame, body, recognition, but kept the most important: his heart. The narrative like fate's own tribute. He was not a perfect man, but in every flaw there was fight. In every scar there was love. He was once legend, then outcast, and now a kind father, an ordinary man learning to live with himself. Once he told a rare interviewer, "I don't want people to remember me for records. I want them to remember I made them smile." That simple statement carries all he learned through over half a life of enduring. In Miami, evenings come slowly. He likes standing on the balcony looking at the ocean, where the sun sinks gradually, light spreading like the last streak of a legend's memory. In the wind, sometimes he hears the stands again, not sure real or imagined. He smiles, no longer sad, just grateful for having those days. His life is a sad song, but not silenced. And if someone asks if he regrets, he will say, "No, I lived every swing fully." In the end, salvation doesn't come from fame or forgiveness. It comes from accepting oneself both light and dark. He is no longer an icon. No need to be the man who saved baseball. He is just Sammy Sosa, the one who loved this game more than his own life. When sunset falls on the small field behind the house, light stretches long on the grass. The old bat leans against the chair, and his son's laughter rings. In that moment, perhaps the world has given back to Sammy what it once took: peace. If you ever believed that one swing could change a nation, remember Sammy Sosa. Because heroes don't always fade sometimes, we just stop looking for them. Sammy Sosa is the cruelest proof of how America can embrace someone into its heart, then push them out into the cold as if they never existed. We witnessed a shoeshine boy in Consuelo, sleeping on cement floors and eating cold rice with salt water, growing up amid his mother's sweat and Caribbean waves, reaching the center of American culture. In 1998, when America was still bitter after the MLB strike, when stands were empty and faith died young, it was him, not anyone else, who made millions stand again. Each swing, each time he kissed two fingers, pointed to the sky, then raised the American flag, wasn't just sports. It was a reminder. This country could still believe in something beautiful. The brown-skinned immigrant with broken English helped America find its own heart again. And then, we witnessed how this country repaid. Just one broken bat in 2003, revealing cork inside, and everyone rushed to erase the entire summer of 1998 from memory. In 2005, when Sammy had to sit before Congress in a gray suit, hearing the translator relay each accusation, it wasn't just an athlete questioned. It was the symbol of the American dream on trial. We let that happen, let the one called the man who saved baseball be turned into a symbol of cheating. Let the Hall of Fame close to him for a decade. Let tribute videos to the home run era deliberately cut him out of the frame. We accepted that with frightening ease. We laughed when his back tore from just a sneeze, called it the sneeze heard round the world, as if his pain was entertainment. We mocked his changing skin after retirement without asking how many years of exhaustion, how much medicine, how many sleepless nights he carried. We forgot the most important question. How much did that man give us before we took everything? But what makes this story not just a tragedy but a warning for us lies in the end of his life. At 57, back aching, eyes dim, moving slowly, he no longer demands the Hall of Fame. He teaches his son to hold the bat, smiles when the boy misses and says, "That's how it starts." He builds fields for poor kids in Dominican and says, "Let them have chances I never had." When the son asks, "Papa, why they laugh?" he doesn't answer with bitterness. He answers with kind actions. The lesson here isn't just, don't judge. The lesson is, we, as a nation, must learn to be loyal to the people who lifted us in our worst moments. Must remember that behind the record is a broken body. Behind the icon is a child who once begged to be seen. Sammy Sosa may never enter the Hall of Fame, but if Americans still have fairness in their hearts, he deserves to enter our collective memory as a scarred man who gave everything so we could have one summer to believe in something good. If the story of Sammy Sosa makes you believe that sometimes one person can awaken a whole nation with just one swing, leave a subscription as a tribute to him. Thank you for joining us. See you in the next video where other legends are still waiting to be heard and remembered with respect.